All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record, where we talk to the people actually doing the work to make clean energy real, one project at a time. So today's guest is Michael Janzen, but you might know him better as Mr. Sunshine, the energetic, outspoken, no BS solar pro who's built a brand on truth, trust, and transparency in the solar game. So with years of experience under his belt and a deep understanding of how the industry is shifting, Michael has thoughts, and today you're going to hear them. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Do you prefer Mike, Michael, Mr. Sunshine? What should we call you?
Oh, Michael. I go by Michael just because growing up, there were so many Mikes in my class, and I found out that girls actually like Michael better than Mike's. Since I was 16, I've been Michael.
That's amazing. Well, that's as good of a reason as any to, stick with that. But let's take us back to those days. Was there anything back when you were 16 when that sparked the entire interest in solar, or was it a little further down the line?
No, the funny thing is I was supposed to be a rock star, right? So I glommed on the music at that time in my life and had the long hair. I was a product of the '80s and sang for a band, was signed with Paramount, and did okay. So this is what old rockers that didn't become rock stars end up looking like and doing. Yeah, that's I never really thought I was going to end up in the solar industry. And it was actually my daughter when the whole economic downturn was taking place in '07, '08. I was having a hard time finding a job. I worked in corporate telecommunications for 20 years prior to this. And one day she goes, "You need to do something green, Dad."
Wow.
And the light bulb went off. And because I provide a lot of bandwidth to solar companies abroad, and everything fell into place. And it's been almost 20 years now since I got into this. All because my
Wow.
daughter said, "You
That's
need to do
amazing. And then
something
when you
green, Dad."
say that's amazing. And then when you say got into this, what is this? What is it exactly that, you're doing right now?
Well, I'm a solar guy and I help people save a whole lot of money on their energy bills. And, through various methods of not just solar, but energy efficiency solutions in conjunction with solar. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but primarily it's about energy efficiency, energy savings, cost savings. And I started off with the solar water heating industry. And when I got into solar here in Arizona, there was only three solar companies in the entire state.
Wow.
Been well over 3,000 since I got started, and currently there's almost 900. A lot has changed
Wow.
along the way. Yeah.
Well, of course. Take us back then, because we'll obviously get into, the nitty-gritty stuff later, but how did Mr. Sunshine become, your identity in the solar space?
I one, it's my disposition. I'm just kind of one of those guys that generally has a positive, upbeat disposition. I find the silver lining in things almost immediately. And I started off and I was doing very well. It was going great, and the more I started researching it and studying it, the more I learned about really what the company I was working for at the time was doing wrong. And I
Hmm.
was nicknamed that by the owner of the company almost in a negative way. Well, so you're Mr. Sunshine, but it just kind of stuck and
Okay.
very quickly turned into a positive thing. So I just kind of hung with it. And when I first started my own company, it was actually named Rocket Solar after my dog Rocket. And I couldn't think of anything better. Marketing companies and stuff that I was dealing with kept prompting me to use this Mr. Sunshine thing. And I really didn't want to, but they, did some arm twisting and convinced me. We made the switch, and it turned out to be a great decision because people kind of like the name.
Of course. I like the name for sure. And when you were really starting out, and even when it was Rocket Solar, you were saying that you were working with companies and you were seeing what they were doing wrong. You can see the silver lining in a lot of things. What was the moment that you said, that this industry, like the solar industry, it needs a different kind of voice, and you're going to be that guy? What was that entire moment like?
Well, I won't name names. The company I was working for at the time, as I was saying, the more I learned, the more I realized what they were doing wrong, and I figured that a lot of it was intentional, and I was actually trained wrong along with all of my counterparts, and we were trained how to sell solar, how to close deals. We weren't really taught much
Mhm.
about the technology itself, how it really works, the economics behind it and everything. We were just taught to go out and make all these promises and claims. And because we believed them, we turned to our customers and regurgitated the same thing. As I learned more, figured out more, started digging into the math, I realized we were screwing everybody we sat down with, and not intentionally, but because of the way we were taught how to make sales and make money for the company. And so at that point, I went and spoke to the
Mhm.
owners of the company. It was a smaller company, and explained what I was finding out and thinking I'd discovered something that was going to help them. The double talk that I got back trying to explain things away, at that point I realized they were doing this on purpose. And it was the same MO as other companies that were there and come up and coming at the time. And, I decided I'm going to speak up about it. So I went to the Attorney General's office, and in speaking with them, ended up getting that
Wow.
company shut down. Subsequently, I've shut down over 50 companies over the last almost 20 years. Solar doesn't need to be sold. And that's the problem. Everybody in this industry has that mentality: sell, sell, sell. Consumers need to be educated on
Mm.
critical things that they're not being educated on. They need the truth explained to them. The whole tax credit thing was a huge issue for decades, and it still is. Something that simple. It's being
Of course.
promised to people as you're going to get a check. It's guaranteed money. And unfortunately for a lot of folks, it's not. So it's things like that. And we're going to wipe out your bill. And, a system that's only this big is going to save you this much, and just overselling it. And so I've made it part of our practices to educate consumers on the critical things that other companies can't, won't, or don't. I really thought it would be something that would kind of take off
Hmm.
throughout the industry over the years, but it hasn't until just very recently, and we're talking almost 19 years of screaming from the rooftops. And, it's finally starting to get traction, but it's done very well for us. It's made us a standout. And for that, I'm grateful, but we are a different animal for sure.
And I mean, I think that all kind of comes from, being able to stand out, like you said. I mean, being able to stick through the regulations, the change, the challenges, kind of whatever is being thrown at the industry by, the different administrations, any policy that's being made. So I think in the position that you're in, what are some of the biggest regulatory or, utility changes you've seen over the past, year or couple of years that,
Well, I've
you
seen them
think or you
all, and
see
every
how
time
they're impacting?
I've seen them all, right? And the funny thing is every time that there's a notable, maybe not even significant, but just a notable change, the end of solar is near, right? The panic begins, and every company out there starts selling to that. You better act now before it's gone forever. Whether it's net metering, buyback rates from different utilities and things like that. Need batteries, no batteries, that kind of stuff. People attack it like, hey, well, right now with what's going on, the BBB, the big beautiful bill, the industry has been terrified of this
Hmm.
happening, and for the most part, certainly not fans of it. Me personally, because I understand the economics behind solar and how it really works and how it needs to be explained and displayed, yeah, the tax credits are great, but I've never felt they were necessary. They're kind of like the icing on the cake. Even without the icing, the
Hmm.
cake is still really good, right? So we're going to go through this big change now. Let's just assume that's going to go through as is, unamended, and major changes in the incentives are going to happen and go away. A lot of people are thinking that the solar industry is going to be done for and shut down. That's not the case at all. What's going to happen, and mark my words on this, is yeah, there's going to be a big shakeup. We're going to see a lot of fallout. I'm gonna guess probably in the range of 70%, maybe more, of all of those in solar are going to go bye bye. They're going to go away because their business model is built
Hmm.
on the necessity of having these incentives, their pay scales and everything else. And most people aren't going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to take a major pay cut so I can keep doing what I'm doing, but for less." Right? People don't generally work that way. So there's going to be a lot of fallout. A lot of companies are going to shut down. The guys and
Hmm.
gals and owners and operators and reps and everybody else that understand the economics, we know that there's room in this industry to accommodate for the loss of these incentives. Again, they're great, but you know what's going to happen is manufacturers are going to have to reduce some of their margins, and if they want to stay in business, they will. The margins are there.
Exactly.
That trickles down to the distributors, and from the distributors to the installers, and the installers to the reps and the customers and everything else. What's not going to change is the cost of labor, but there's still room for adjustment in that. So if some of these adjustments take place as they necessarily will need to, and I would say will happen, we're going to be fine. Yeah, the giant commissions and stuff like that aren't going to be as giant. Okay, fine. We're going to sell more of it, and we're going to get rid of the solar bro community. And I know you know who I'm talking about. The guys that are driving Lambos and Ferraris that have been in it for a year, that learned how to sell it but leave a wake of destruction in their path. of customers that got the wrong solutions and things like that. So most of those guys aren't going to make it. And the ones that know what they're doing, that can do things honestly and ethically and properly, they're going to be the ones that survive.
Hmm.
The guys that implement energy efficiency in conjunction, over the last couple of years, solar and roofing have joined hands heavily, but HVAC and other energy efficiency solutions
Yeah.
have always needed to be part of the equation. And so we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a big evolution in the industry, I think, as well as the downsizing, but the need for it and regrowth of the industry after about probably a year will happen and everything will be fine. That's my take on it, honestly.
Fair enough.
And
I mean, with
I,
all of the different, of course,
oh no, sorry, go
with
ahead.
all the different changes and, I want to say like alterations that are happening, how do you explain all these, rule changes like net metering, the incentives, the permitting delays to homeowners who, are just simply trying to save money?
Well, let's start off with net metering, for example. Net metering, and the way most people see it and understand it, when it changes, they think that they're getting ripped off. And so far, I haven't seen that. And I've seen major changes with net metering from it being just completely wiped out. It wasn't really fair for the utility companies. And it's not that I want them to make more money. I believe fair is fair, right? I never bash the utility company or treat them like the villain, because when I'm sitting in a customer's home or we're online or something like that, or one of my reps, they're using energy that they're providing to help facilitate our presentation to remove them to a large degree. So they're not the bad guys, but net metering wasn't really fair to the utility companies. There's more to it. There's the cost of energy, the cost of generating the energy. There's the transmission of that energy, other things that still have to take place even when solar's implemented, unless you're completely off grid, which is a tiny fraction of solar customers. So going to a compensation model
Hmm.
where they're doing a buyback, the economics still work out great. And for example, here in Arizona, we have APS as the largest utility provider. Their buyback program has been dwindling by 10% every year. And it's, I think 7 years into it, it's half of what it used to be, the buyback rate. And it's still fair. Everybody else tries to sell it's not, so we need to add this and add that. But it is fair when we're looking at what they're getting from the homeowner versus what they're having to pay for. It's a fair deal. So I think buyback programs are great. There's always going to be change. All utilities, excuse me, are going to continually try to find a way to give back less and take more. That's the MO of all businesses at that kind of level, unfortunately. The industry has managed to keep pace with the technology in areas where I never would recommend batteries before. I recommended against them. Other areas we wouldn't do a deal without batteries. APS was one
Hmm.
of those ones where I'd steer people away. The economics have changed, and now we do because it makes economic sense. It's beneficial to the customer. So, the whole
Hmm.
net metering thing, not a big deal. Obviously, we've survived it, and there are still states that have it. It'll go away and it'll be fine. So, anybody out there that sees this or catches this, if you still have net metering and it goes away, relax. You'll be fine. As far as some of the other things, it's really insignificant. At the end of the day, you're paying for power. The cost with the incumbent utility company has always gone up. It always will. You're committed to pay it. You're not going to sit in the dark and sweat or sit in the dark and freeze. So if there's an alternative option that works as well, if not better, and it's more cost effective, change. It's that simple. Do you want to pay this much or do you want to
Hmm.
pay, that much? I'd rather pay this much
Exactly.
than that much to get the same result for something so long as it works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, I think with all these customers, with or the conversations that you're having with the customers and the homeowners, I feel like, I mean, this might be a bad assumption, but I feel like you have a lot of the same conversations. So, I mean, what's something homeowners ask you all the time that you wish, they actually understood better?
Well, that's a good question. See, here's the thing, and I tell this to homeowners, you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's impossible. It's literally impossible for you to know what questions you really need to ask somebody like me or, the rep sitting across from you, right? I mean, how would they know what questions to really ask? And do they know what questions should be being asked of them to come up with a proper solution? The answer is no, they don't
Mhm.
on both cases. And that's a huge, huge problem. You see the book back here, Solar for Smarties, I wrote that. And I didn't write it as a comprehensive buyer's guide. I didn't write it as a fancy sales brochure for my business. It's literally a tool for homeowners to use, and it has roughly 50 questions in there that they necessarily need to ask somebody that they're speaking with about solar and energy efficiency, as well as the questions that should be asked of them. And if they don't hear those questions being asked, it's a huge red flag that that rep either doesn't know to ask or they don't care to ask. There's no third option there, and they need to be done with them. And if they can't answer the questions in this guide, and they're
Mhm.
mostly rudimentary questions, if they can't answer them, don't do business with them, period. If they got to call and get help, let them call and get help and learn along the way. But you don't, this is a big, this isn't like buying a new, a new cell phone or a computer or a TV that's commoditized and that's easy. This is tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And if you don't do it right, it's a financial anchor. And no solar salesperson will ever utter those words out of their mouth. It's always blue skies and promises. So, I tell people the truth. And look, if it's done right by someone who knows what they're doing, there's nothing that can beat it, honestly, because it's money you're committed to spend. You have to spend money on power. So it's not like you can go invest it in something else and not pay your power bill. So you have to spend money on it. And again, if it's done right, it's a major winner economically. If it's done wrong,
Mhm.
financial anchor. So, the best question to ask, gosh,
Fair enough.
it's tough. I mean, that's again, they need to get my little book here. I give them away for free, just so you know, and I can give you a link. They can download it. It's whether they buy from me or anybody else, this will help them save a huge amount of time, effort, headache, and money simply because it's arming them against this army of reps that unfortunately have been improperly, inadequately trained on these solutions. It's more complicated than most people think. So I can't really just pick one
Mhm.
question, you know? How much
No
is it?
worries. I think one thing
Right.
that'll kind of maybe even help get that the thought process through would be the idea of have you ever walked away from a job because it just wasn't the right fit, even if it meant, losing revenue, or have you seen or pushed somebody to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's part of what we train on. Don't be afraid to walk away, right? You can't lose what you don't have, first off, right? So you don't lose revenue, you don't lose the deal. You don't lose the deal until after it's inked, it's approved and in process and something falls apart. Um, right? That's the reality of it. So you can't lose what you don't have. But if it's not a fit,
Mhm.
we don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. And it's not just, I'll be honest again, it's not
Fair
just for the
enough.
customer's benefit, right? If you do the wrong thing, you end up having the phone calls, the emails, the text messages, the complaints, the bad reviews, all the things that nobody wants, all because somebody was greedy over
Mhm.
the commission on one deal. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So you have to be able to walk away. And those people, they're the best ones you can ask for a review, right? I mean, we didn't do business with Michael because he told us it didn't make sense. It wasn't the best solution for us because of, we're going to be moving soon or this or that, whatever, right? There are times where the solution comes out to be cash flow negative in the beginning. It's actually going to cost them more. And if it's going to take food off their table, I
Mhm.
tell them don't do it, understanding that you're still going to have to pay your ever increasing electric bill. But there are many times
Exactly.
where we earn customers business that we're actually costing them more than what they were currently paying on average, right? It's a long-term
Mhm.
equation. If they're going to stay put, it makes sense to do it. So that's a whole nother separate
It's its
conversation.
own podcast in itself.
Yeah, it really is.
Fair enough. Well, then, kind of stemming from that, I guess, if someone's just getting started as a rep or an installer, what's the number one, the first thing that they should learn?
Really, the first thing that they need to learn is the definition of integrity. Honestly, the commissions are tempting, right? And what happens is the sales industry as a whole has a term called commission breath. And when the dollars are good, you start
Mhm.
saying things and stuff starts coming out of your mouth that maybe necessarily shouldn't. That's not in the consumer's best interest. Integrity is critical. Learn about the technology, not so you can become an engineer, but so you can answer the questions when they come up. Understand the economics first and foremost, the real economics. go beyond what you're being trained and taught by the company. Dig and research, ask other people questions in forums. Other professionals love to share their knowledge. So ask those that have been doing it for a long time, not how do I sell more, but how do I explain this? Why does this mean this, or why does this do that? The more you understand, the more you can put together
Mhm.
a proper and effective solution that saves them money, because the goal isn't to wipe out the bill, quote unquote, wipe out the bill. Everybody talks about that. The goal should really be to save the customer the most money we can. And they're not always the same thing. Everybody thinks that wiping out the bill is the goal. It's an ideal, but realistically, saving them the most money we can. And more often than not, that means leaving a little meat on the bone with the utility company. You can take it too far to where
Mhm.
you could have saved a customer more money with a smaller system. Sounds weird, but again, a deeper conversation. So they
Exactly.
need to learn the economics, and so they don't go out and screw
Fair
people
enough.
unintentionally. And
That's huge.
that's a
I love
huge
that. And
part
I
of our
think
training, by the way.
that's amazing. I love that. And I mean, you're saying part of your training, and I think it's important to know kind of where you fit in the entire, process, because you obviously sit between the buyer and the installer, but how do you get paid out of that? And where do you fit in?
Well, there's so many different models, right? Direct rep for an installer. There's an independent agent, agencies, and sales orgs, right? So the most common model today is the sales org, or being a rep for a sales org. And so sales org is a company that doesn't do their own installations. They've got installation agreements with partner companies that's what they do. They install, they provide the engineering, they provide the equipment, they provide the installation. They're called an EPC, engineering, procurement, and
Hmm.
construction. And they tend to focus on that part of it because that's what they're good at, maybe not so great at sales. They use independent sales orgs that they're great at sales and marketing and stuff. So the compensation on those things typically is what's called a red line model. There's cost of goods models, but the most prevalent one is called a red line. And that red line is, here's how much it costs you to have us install one of these systems. Let's say it's you know, $1.90. So whatever you sell, it costs $1.90
Hmm.
per watt to install that system. You can go out and sell it for, you know, 275, and the margin between the
Hmm.
$1.90 and the 275, that's yours. People think, wow, that's a lot of commission. 10 kilowatt, that's 10,000 watts. It's $10,000 commission or something like that. Now there's marketing costs, there's administrative costs, there's overhead and all these other things. And then that's to the owner of the company. Then there's the sales rep portion of it, which might end up, being
Hmm.
I've seen companies pay as low as 25 cents, and then higher depending on the sales price. So the margins vary, the commissions vary on a deal depending on how it was sold. The industry still doesn't have like a fixed pricing model. I don't think it ever will, but
Hmm.
as more people become familiar with it, it becomes more commoditized. What's going to happen is that pricing range gets smaller and tighter, and there's like an acceptable range, much like real estate and automobiles and other, big ticket. As it becomes more commoditized, the
Exactly.
pricing will adjust accordingly.
Fair enough. I think it's that's a really big thing to mention too, because I think with a lot of these businesses, nothing's ever going to be completely uniform. Nothing's ever going to be the same price. You have quality that comes into it. You have service. You have the products that are used. I think it's all going to be very, very set up perfectly towards the customer. So you're going
Well,
to get
it's
what you
it's
pay for at the end of the day. I think that's
right.
what I
So the
want to kind of lead
knowledge,
into as well as,
as I say, the knowledge of the people that you're
yep, go
dealing
for
with
it.
is paramount, right? That's why I wrote this book. I mean, I had to write the book. Literally, it was just there was nothing out there to help the consumer. Everybody seems like nice guys and girls, and for the most part, they are. They're honest, well-intended people. Most of them that have been improperly trained. So the value and the knowledge and the information you're getting from this person outside of the fluff, right? It's great for the environment. It's going to save you money. Yeah, we get it, right? But
Hmm.
what do I really need? And how do I know that I need what you're telling me? Five other guys told me that I need this, and you're telling me I need that. Why should I believe you? You have to know what you're talking about. You have to be the go to, and not only know everything about your job and what entails it, but every job that touches it, the installation, the administrative
Hmm.
process, and all that goes with it. So you can educate these homeowners and they go, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about. I'm going to put my money over there, because people don't like to hand their money down. They'd rather hand it up, right? And so by
Exactly.
getting yourself educated and learning it. That's how you earn the business, and you don't have to be the low price leader. The guys that sell on price die on price, and so does their company. So don't be
Exactly.
afraid as a consumer to pay this company a little bit more for the same solution if they're showing you that they know what they're doing and they're going to implement it and be there for you in the long run.
Exactly. No, that's huge. That's a great to mention. So, everybody, I want to give a huge thank you to Michael, Mr. Sunshine Janzen. He's given us the real talk about solar, the industry's, growing pains, and, why customers deserve better than, flashy promises and shady contracts, and, how he fits in perfectly there. So, to learn more, keep an eye on MrSunshineSaves.com. And until then, follow Off the Grid on the Record for more unfiltered voices in clean energy. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, we really, really appreciate your time and your insight.
No, I really appreciate